welcome to the Google Classroom session. So we're gonna go through Google Classroom. I'm gonna use my slides to go through things, but I'm also gonna go live into a Google Classroom to sort of show people the basic structure and getting set up and getting going. We'll get into some of the more advanced features of Google Classroom as time allows. But if we don't get through everything, there are a number of videos that I've put on our YouTube channel, which I will bring the next slide up right here. So a little self-promotion here of a YouTube channel that we've just created. So you can get to it by either going to this link here or clicking on the link on the slides after you download them or go to the link. Also, again, once you see this link on any slide, so for example, I'll go to a slide where it exists. So the slide here, you can see the logo down on the right-hand corner. If you click on that, it will take you directly to a video. And again, you can access those from the PDFs that I've posted in the chat. And you can get to it through the link on the chat. All right, so. All right, so let's look at Google Classroom. Okay, the first thing I'm going to mention is this. This is incredibly important. Whenever you create a Google Classroom, within your Google Drive, it's going to create a folder called Classroom. It looks much like this. It's in your Drive. It's super important that you don't play with that folder. Leave it alone. What it does is it creates folders within folders within folders for your assignments, your classes, for your students. And last year we did have an issue where someone went in and did play a bit around with it and then changed some share settings and stuff that really created some issues with it. So we suggest that I highly recommend is that you just leave that folder alone. And I know that it can be confusing because you'll go into your Drive and you'll see this folder in there called Classroom, and intuitively you go, oh, I must have created a Classroom folder for myself and forgotten about it. Let's see what else I can put in there. Please don't. So just avoid that. That's in your Google Drive. And it's best that you just leave that folder alone at all times. Okay, so to get to Google Classroom, you can access it through the waffle. You can go to classroom.google.com. There are some different ways to access it there. If you're a teacher that's new in the district and have never used Google Classroom, we do have to authorize you. So I generally, at this time of year, try to go in daily to make sure that you have permission to create a Google Classroom. Otherwise, you will not be able to. So if you're having trouble creating a Google Classroom, and it may be because your account has not been authorized, you can always email me. And so I am pdeconti at deltasd.bc.ca. I'll just put that in the chat. And so you can email me if you have any questions around that. Perfect. Okay. So I'm just going to go and let's just go to Google Classroom. So it's here in the waffle. And so here you'll see I have a number of classrooms. If it's your first time ever creating a classroom, you're just going to go up to the plus sign on the top right-hand corner. You're going to click on plus, and you're going to create a class. Now, you can also join classes, and sometimes that's really helpful if you join a colleague's class, because then you can help them look at it from a student's perspective. The student perspective is a little different than that of what the teacher sees. So sometimes that will happen. So you can join a colleague's class, and then that way they can sort of see what it looks like. But this is where we create a class, and we simply click on Create, and then we provide some information. Generally, the only information that's required is the name of the class. Section, subject, room really don't matter, and all of this can be edited later. So here's a classroom that I've created. And you always start off by coming to what's called the stream. And so this is the opening page, and at the top you'll see a banner. It'll have the name of the classroom, It'll have a class code, and we'll talk about this in a moment in terms of how students can join the class. There's also, if it's enabled, the ability to insert a Google Meet link, which makes it really handy for having Google Meets. This is a secure way of doing it. We recommend not sharing links, but this link within Google Classroom is a link that can be used and is secure. So the stream is basically an area where there are comments. It can be sort of like a chat room for students, but you as the creator of the classroom have the ability to say students can post here, students cannot post here. My recommendation is if you have students who may not be very familiar with discussion rooms and things like that, that you not allow them at first, and you have you do some work around what should be posted when we're in a room like this. Because what you'll find is some kids will be like, "Hi, how's it going? What's up?" Those sort of comments, which really aren't useful. And each comment needs to be deleted individually. And so it takes a lot of work to get rid of them. So it's really a place where kids, when used properly, students can find out what's happening in the classroom, as well as ask each other questions and create some sort of collaboration and conversation through that. Across the top, you'll see 4 tabs on the teacher side: classwork, people, and grades. And at the far right, there is also a settings gear. And we're going to look at that quickly just to start off with. So the settings gear, and this is, as I said before, you could change things. This was the opening tile that you saw when you created your classroom. But within here, you can change the name. You can change anything. And then down below, there are some important things. So this is where we have the ability for students to join using a code. So there is a code here that can be displayed. So if they're in the classroom, they just type in this code where you go to join a class. So if you remember at the beginning, we clicked on a plus sign and we could either join or create. When they join, they type in this code, and that allows them to self-enroll. That's probably one of the easiest ways to get them to do it. Another way to do it, and this is brand new, is to copy this link and send it to them in some sort of communication. They click on the link and it helps them join the classroom directly. I talked about the stream and whether you want students to be able to comment or not. Here is where we turn it on or off. And so we can allow students to post and comment. So that gives them a lot of freedom. Students can only comment. So you post and they will then comment on those posts only, or only the teacher can post and comment. So you'll make that decision on your own. We'll talk about Guardian summaries in a little bit. And then this is just to enable that Meet link. So we looked at that Meet link in the banner at the very beginning, and this is where you would enable it. There is also some features for grading. We'll get into those a little bit later. And we're just going to close that. Okay, so if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and Lisa will bring them forward to me. All right, so people is the first place we're going to start. Okay, so this is where we can do one of two things. We can add co-teachers, so we can add other adults that are in the class who might need access to the classroom who would be helpful. So this could be EAs, teachers, your LST team, anyone. And you just simply click on the plus sign and and you just begin to type their name, select them, and it sends them an invite. They then have to accept that invite in their Google Classroom. So they'll go to classroom.google.com or to the waffle, and they'll have one of the tiles, and they'll just click on accept the invitation. The other thing we can do is we can also do the same for students. It's a lot of work. I don't know if of many teachers who do it this way, but if you want to, you can do that because names auto-populate. So just by typing a name, the names will auto-populate, and you can just add them that way. So that's another way to do it. We can also invite guardians. And so what happens if you invite a guardian, the parent or the guardian will receive an email, and it'll say, do you want to get updates? And if they do, they'll choose between, I think it's a weekly, a bi-weekly, and a monthly update. And they'll basically just get notified in terms of what assignments are upcoming, what assignments their child may have missed, and the ones that are upcoming. So they don't get any details in terms of grades or comments or feedback. It's just strictly what's coming up and what's done. So it's sort of like a homework list. And so you can invite the guardian by clicking on the three little dots and then doing that. So that's a little bit about the people page and how to populate your classroom. All right. But most of the work's going to happen here on the Classwork page. So Classwork is where you're going to post most of your work, most of your assignments, and it can be used for a variety of communications. So if we click on the Create, we can see what types of communications we can populate on this page. So they could be assignments, they could be quiz assignments, which we hope to get to a bit later. Questions, which you may want to use sort of for a check your understanding, sort of their quick sort of either multiple choice or short answer questions. There's materials, so this might be useful for upcoming events, and I know this year that might be a little different in terms of I often use field trips as the example, but that may not be possible this year. But any types of announcements, materials, things like that you want them to have. And then reuse a post. When you start to create classrooms and you have multiple classrooms or you've used them from year to year, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can reuse posts. So if I created an assignment last year and I want to reuse it this year, I don't have to recreate it. I can just reuse post. We're going to start at actually the very bottom to start off with, and that's topics. Now, if you look on the far right here, pardon me, that's left. On the left, you'll see topics. And topics just basically are a way of sorting my page. You can see there's all these topics and all these assignments associated with it. Well, sometimes that can get kind of busy and hard to find things. But if I just want to find my science, I just click on science.
Peter.
Hello. Hello.
There's been a question that says, how do I save material from last year's classrooms?
Oh, so after, okay. So if you had a classroom last year, you should archive it. And you do that on your tile. So where you see all your tiles and the three little dots, maybe I'll just go there really quickly. So if this was a class at the end of the year, what I suggest you do is you click on the three little dots and that you archive it. And then all archived classes go into an archive. You can't delete it until it's archived. I would also remove students from it before I archive it, just so that they're not in there anymore. But then once it's archived, you can use that reuse post to use any of the assignments that you had in it in the past. So it basically saves it that way when it puts it in the archive. And if I go here, I'm not quite sure if I have anything in my archive. Archived classes. Yeah, these ones are all archived. And archived classes can also then be restored. So if for some reason you want to restore it, you can then restore it, remove the students, and then repopulate it with students. That's a possibility. Yeah, I would remove the students before I archive it, just so that they're all out of there. Okay, so good question. I'm just going to go back to where we were. Okay, so again, I was talking about topics, and so this just helps me sort. So when I clicked on science, what it's going to do in a moment is just show me my science assignments or materials and just post them all in one place. And this does it the same thing for students, so that students don't get a huge list of things that they have to sort through. They too will have that topics list, and they can then sort through things. So these topics work as tags. All right, so they can see all topics or just go through and look at the ones that they want. All right, so the first one we're going to look at is the assignment. Okay, so
Peter,
we're going to,
before you start that, sorry, there was another question that says, can we create a shell classroom and then reuse the classroom multiple times?
so you want to duplicate the classroom?
I think that's the question, Tina. Yes? Yes, it is.
Okay, sorry. So yeah, I'm almost, I'm good. I just want to double check, but I'm almost certain that when we clicked on those three little dots, one of the options was to duplicate
yes.
the class. So sorry, everything is super slow when I'm in a Google Meet and I'm sharing my screen. It's like, so yeah, copy. So there's, it's going to want to move it now. I don't want to move it. Okay. You can also pick up these tiles and move them. So you can move these tiles around and organize them however you want. I'm not going to do that right now because you can see how slowly it's moving. My computer's starting to hum. So hopefully that helped. So you could just copy it. Okay, back to classwork. Create. And then the assignment. So most of the structure, whether it's materials, quizzes, whatever, all have this same sort of format. They all basically look like this. They all require a title. So give it some instructions. All right. And then you can add content. You can either directly create a Google Doc or a slides presentation while you're working in it. In most cases, I would say people already have them prepared in advance, but you can add any of these types of features or tools to it. But what most people do is they'll click on add. And what add does is it really saves time. If you're someone who's been sharing files with students, this saves you a ton of time. So we can add everything from a link to a website. So if we had a website we wanted students to go and view, we could use that. We could add a file from our computer. We can even add a YouTube video. So if we had something around that we needed to have them watch, we could add a YouTube video. But from Google Drive is where most of your work will be added. So here, if you have an assignment that you've created as a slides presentation or a Google Doc, you would just select Google Drive and then select it from there. And the beautiful thing that it does here is when you when you add something like a Google Doc, as it slowly loads, it will allow you to then, so let's say I'm just going to pick this one. I'm going to say insert. It's going to give you this option at the end here, and this is the one that saves teachers a huge amount of time. It's going to give you three options. The first one is that the students can view the file. So essentially all they can do is open it, look at it. They can't edit it. They can't do anything. The next one is students can edit the file. And this means every student in that classroom that you've given access to this can edit the same file. So the best way to sort of describe this is imagine putting one sheet of paper in the middle of the room on a table, and then 30 hands and 30 pencils all writing on that one piece of paper. So sometimes that's helpful. If it's a group sort of project or a group presentation, you might want to use that. But in most cases, teachers tend to use this final option, which is make a copy for each student. And so what this does is it makes an individual copy for each student that they can then have access to edit and then turn in. And then when they turn it in, it has the name of the assignment. It'll have their name on it and everything. Is this recommended? I just saw the question. Is it recommended for primary? I would say there's few teachers that are using it for primary. Google Sites would be a better tool to communicate with students in primary. There are some I think there's some grade 2 classrooms that are using it, but mostly it's sort of a grade 4 and up tool. All right. So I'm going to say, oops, the students, pardon me, I'm going to make a copy for each student. All right. I'm just going to change this. And then on the far right, we can do a number of things. So this is particularly useful if you might be platooning or be a secondary teacher. If you have more than one class. So when I taught science to 2 classes of grade 7. So I could then be enrolled as a co-teacher in my colleague's class, and I could go down and find their science, their class, and then click on it, so that when I create this assignment, it's not only going into the Google Classroom for my students, it's going into the Google Classroom for the students from my colleague. Or if you're a secondary teacher and you have 3 blocks of Science 8, you don't have to recreate that assignment 3 times. You create it once and then click on your 3 blocks of science, and then it's assigned to each of them. The other thing you can do is you can also assign it to specific students. So when you click on this, it's going to list all of your students, but you can decide that, no, I just want to assign it to these 2 students. So this really allows for differentiation, and no one sees the difference. So it doesn't matter. No one's really going to notice that, oh, you got it and I didn't, or what the assignment is. It also is, that's a good way of also setting up group projects. So if you have, you could copy the assignment and then create it so that only these 2 students get it, because they're going to be doing all the work on it. But in this case, I'm going to assign it to all. There is a points value anywhere from 0 to 100, or you can also make it ungraded.
Peter, just speaking of colleagues, can you not collaborate with a teacher and use one Google Classroom, and then you can duplicate the Google Classroom to your drive as well, so that you don't have to go through and recreate everything?
You cannot. You can copy it, so it could be copied, and so you can make yourself another copy. So once you become a co-teacher in a classroom, it'll be on your tiles, and then you could copy it and do it that way.
It's just a great way to collaborate. Yeah, we've done that before with some of our classes, that we've made one Google Classroom, and then the teachers have just duplicated the classroom to their drive, and then everything was in there.
Okay, yeah. And I've seen it used also as sort of a professional development tool. So someone will set up a Google Classroom in their school, and then either enroll teachers as the students or as co-teachers, and then everyone has access to that, and people post whatever it is that they find in there, and use that as sort of a collaborative space in that manner. The only thing I'll just again emphasize, because you brought up the word drive, is that don't go and copy your classroom folder or do anything with that classroom folder that is in your drive. It's a no-go area. The only thing you can do to that one is change its color to red, so that you know that that's a no-go area. Please don't play with that one. Okay, so moving on, we can then provide a due date if we want. So there's a calendar or no due date. Entirely up to you. And here's the topics. And so now I can tag it with a topic, so that this assignment will fall under that topic. So it makes it easier to find. So I'm just going to pick that one. All right. And then we can click up here and we can assign it. We can also click on the drop-down arrow if we want to schedule it for a certain time. All right, so I can schedule it so that I could do, if I'm really keen, I can get all my assignments, all my materials, everything ready on the weekend, and then schedule them to be posted on certain dates. You can also save it as a draft. The one thing I'll say, though, is that if you save it as a draft, when you come back, if you've made a mistake in terms of how you want to provide each student with any content that you added, you can't change that. Once it's, after it's been posted, you can't make any changes to it. So you can make other changes, but this part you cannot change. You can just delete it and then reattach it and start all over again. So then I just assign it. Okay, and so there you'll see there's my Google Classroom assignment too. So the student's perspective is a little bit different. And so I'm just going to quickly demonstrate that. So I'm just switching to a student. And so you'll see a student as well. They have the tiles. There's the plus sign where they join the class. This is where they would join. And then they would just click on their classroom. And you can see rather than 4 tabs, they only have 3, the stream, classwork, and people. They don't have the one that was right over here, which was grading. They can see their assignments as they're posted, or they can go to their classwork and find their assignments. Okay, so here, and again, they can sort through it. Looks very, very similar to what we saw on the teacher side. When they click on one, it opens up, it reveals sort of a preview. They can then click on the view assignment. Okay, and then they're ready to work on it. So here's the document that I attached. So when they click on this, you'll notice a couple of things. Usually here it says untitled document, but here it's added the student's name. The student's name is Tech Help. It's added the name of the assignment. And so that when they turn it in, it's turned in with all the appropriate information. Once the student has finished working on it, so maybe there was some things that they had to work on here, you'll notice on the top right, there's a turn in button. And they click on turn in. And now it's going to be sent to your classroom. Or sorry, sent to your teacher's classroom so that you can then look at it and mark it. Oh, it just switched back to my account. Hold on. Let's go back here. I'm logged into too many accounts here, so it's booted me out and defaulted back to my original account. I'm just going to go back to that assignment. So I turned it in. It's going to ask me to probably right here, turn it in again. So turn in. It's going to say, are you sure you want to turn it in? I'm going to say, yes, I want to turn it in to my teacher. I could also leave a comment for the teacher. So if I had to say, you know, I had trouble with question 3 or whatever, you could do that. Now you'll also see it says unsubmit until the teacher actually begins the marking of the assignment. So they actually go and open it, and we'll look at that in a minute. They can actually unsubmit it and continue to work on it. So the student submits it at 3 o'clock or whatever, goes home and says, oh, that really wasn't my best work. I think I could do some more on that. They could go home and unsubmit it, continue to work on it, and then resubmit it. But if I, as the teacher, had already opened it and started to assess, they're unable to do that. So there, they've submitted it. And now I'll just go to my Google Classroom. So now I'm in as the teacher. You can see there's the grades. Go to the classwork. Here's the assignment. I can see 1 student's turned it in, 2 assigned, meaning 2 students have yet to turn it in. I can also go view that assignment. Okay, I can see student 1 has turned it in. It tells me in a number of areas. Here it tells me it turned it in. These 2 have yet to turn it in. Over on the far left, it says this student has turned it in. These 2 have yet to turn it in. But I can then start my assessment. So once it's handed in and I click on it, it's going to open up this document for me. Okay, and there is the assignment. All right. There's a few things that make it really quite easy to sort of scroll through all the students' assignments. I can click on this drop-down arrow where it says turned in, and I can then just toggle through and select the next assignment I want to mark. I can also use these arrows here to toggle through the assignments. So it'll tell me the name of the student as I toggle through, and it'll just bring it forward. And then I have the ability to add comments to it. So there's 2 areas here. There's a grading and a comment feature. And so the comment feature also has a comment bank. If I select a area that I want to comment on, so I basically just highlight, I get this comment bubble. And when I add a comment, I might say something like, use of words. All right, probably not a really effective comment, but that's what we'll use for now. I click on comment. I can also click on the 3 dots. And what I can do there is I can add it to my comment bank. So it creates a comment bank for you. So if you're continuously using comments, you don't have to repeat and rewrite the comment over and over again. So I'm just going to add that to the comment bank. And it's going to say add. And it's added to my comment bank. So as I come across other areas, as I click on the words, so I click on the word, I highlight words, I get the speech bubble, I click on it. If I use the hashtag, it brings back, it should have had my last 5. It doesn't have my good use of words. Interesting. It should have the last 5 words that you've used. Or sorry, the last 5 comments you've used, pardon me. All right.
Peter?
Yes.
Quick questions. One, are we limited to how many words we can use in the comment?
No.
No? Okay. And then second, going back to when we were displaying the assignments, can they be arranged in the order in which they were returned?
They do not. They generally organize them based on the student's name. You can, and I'll show you that in a moment. I'll just finish with this comment bank. The other thing you can do is as you start to type in letters, it starts to look for comments that contain those letters. So the sky is blue. So wherever I use good. Then I can just click on it and it adds that comment there. So I click on comment. When the student gets it back, it looks exactly the same here. If they're unsure as to, well, it says tutorials here is highlighted in yellow, which of these 2 comments goes with it? I just click on the word and it moves in the comment. So I know that this comment is associated with this right here. When I click on camera, you'll see that this one moves in that way. And then students can also click on the comment and comment back and reply to the comment. And there could be a conversation going on. It can also be resolved. Resolved comments don't disappear forever. They just go into the comments and can come back. So the question again was, gee, see, I've already forgotten it, Lisa.
Going back to when we're displaying the assignments, how you were going to go back and show us something in there, because you said that it comes back in the way the student name as opposed to when the assignments are actually returned. Right.
Okay. Thank you for reminding me. So I was in commenting, and at the top is grading. What you can see is you can see history. So right here it says see history, and that will tell you when it was turned in. So if you're curious as to when students have turned things in, it will tell you there. But if you want to just see the assignments, you can see here Tech Help 1, Tech Help 2, Tech Help 3. They're arranged in the sort of an alphabetical order as to how they are arranged. The only other thing you can do is just look at all the turned in ones, or the ones that are assigned and yet to be completed, and then ones that you've returned after you've returned them. So hopefully that answers that person's question. Okay, so I'm just going to go back into here. Once I can also leave a private comment here for a student. So these are comments that only that student would see. And then I could return the assignment. And then the student will get the assignment back in their Google Classroom. So they just go back into their Google Classroom and they'll see their assignment right there. All right. Okay. So I click on return and it's returned. Now, when the student gets it, they can actually, if you want them to resubmit it, they can work on it and resubmit it. So it doesn't have to be a summative process. It can be an ongoing formative process more so. All right. So I'm going to go back to my Google Classroom. Now, there are a couple of new features that these are some of the more advanced features. I'm just trying to find, that's not the one. It was this one. There we go. What is also available within Google Classroom is the ability to add a rubric. And so here's a rubric that I created. And so I basically just took this from a performance standard and just copy and pasted the materials in just to create it. But you can create a rubric fairly easily within Google Classroom. Let's just quickly look at that. So when I was in this assignment, I'm going to click on, there's 3 dots here, and I can click on them to edit. And the other thing that I should have mentioned that you can do is you can also move these by just dragging and dropping. So if you want to move anything around, you can just drag and drop. So let's go into this one, and I'm just going to edit it. And you'll see that there's the ability to add a rubric here. So you can create a rubric, you can reuse it again if you've already created one. You can also import one from Sheets. You'd have to set it up in Sheets and then import it. But let's just click on Create. You have the ability to use scoring, so they use a 1 through however many levels of a scale that you input. I'm just going to turn that off. And so it's going to ask for a title, so this might be like the quick scale. And it might be for instructional writing. And then, I mean, you could be as simple as just going and copying, pasting like from a performance standard, or setting up your own. So, you know, this might be, you know, not yet, or whatever term you want to use, and then you would put in a description. And then you could just continuously add. So no, it's going to ask me for that. Oops. Oh my goodness. Here. Whatever you wanted to put. And then you could add another level of criteria. So we could just continuously add these as we go along. And it creates this rubric so that when a student goes into their assignment, they see this rubric. The nice part is after, I'm just going to close this. Start. Oops. When I go in to assess a student, here is my rubric. So the assignment's going to pop up over here, and the rubric is over here. Now, if I know intuitively, you know, what the scale descriptors are, I can just click on whichever descriptor is appropriate. If I'm not sure, I can click on a drop-down arrow here. Open that up, and then it gives me the descriptor, and I can select the descriptor. I could go then down to meaning and select the one that is appropriate, that fits. And that's a great, yes.
Along that line then, for the resubmission, how is that expressed? Like, is the ability to resubmit a manual option, or do teachers verbally tell it, or is it a button that you have to check off?
So the students will have, it's a bit of both. The students will have the ability to resubmit, and they'll just go into their assignment and then resubmit the assignment. But generally, you know, the teachers will say, because there'll be some things where teachers will say, that's it. You know, this is the 12th time, no more resubmitting. So you're going to have to verbally tell them, or it might be something where it's just a hand in and returned. So it's a bit of both. So they'll have that ability. You'll have to inform them in terms of what your practice is, and what you want for that assignment. So they'll have some choice, but it'll be up to the teacher to direct it. So it's a bit of both. Hopefully that answers it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so there's the rubric, and then I could return it. So. And you can see when I opened it, this was a student who I believe I had returned it to, and it came back. And so it actually showed me what I had assessed the student as previously. So in terms of that, if you were going back and forth, you could sort of see, okay, this is where they were at. And now let's see if there's been any improvement, and there might be a change. All right. And I think we're... about comment banks. All right. The other, one of the last pieces that I'm just going to mention. There we go. Is another, another option that's been presented in Classroom is the Originality Report. And so I'm just going to view this as, oops, not view. I wanted to edit it. Within Google Classroom, you are currently allowed to use 3 Originality Reports. And what Originality Reports do is they check for plagiarism. So they will then look online for any passages that may have been plagiarized or copied. But it also allows students, so when I attach an Originality Report, so it's down at the bottom here, it's called Check Plagiarism. It used to be called Originality Report. It also allows students to use this, and I'm going to show you how it works, to check their work before they submit it. In fact, before they even submit work, if they haven't checked it using the Originality Report, it tells them. They get a dialog box that says, you haven't checked your work yet. Are you really sure you want to submit this? And you can attach this to 3 assignments within Classroom. And so that's kind of limiting because 3 assignments over the course of a year are not very many. But they are increasing that to 5. They haven't really said when, but I'm anticipating that'll be in September. And the only other option then is just to create another Google Classroom. And then you have another set of 5 assignments to attach it to. So the way the Originality Report works is if I go and now view this assignment, and I select an assignment, with the grading option turned on, I have my Originality Reports, and right here it says 1 flagged passage. So I'm going to click on that. And as it slowly loads, you'll see on the far right, it has a count. So here it says there was 1 web match. I can also look at it as a percentage, and I think this says it's 22% is plagiarized. And I can also click, if you can see there's it's sort of a gray highlight. If I click on it, it becomes yellow. And then what it does is it goes out and it says, okay, well, this is what the student wrote, and this is what we found online. All right, so it tells me where it was found, and it tells me that this has been basically copied. So we have an Originality Report that we can use. We have limited use of it, but it allows us to see if students have plagiarized anything. It does not compare against other students' submitted work, only passages that are found online. All right, so I'm going to get out of that. So within Google Classroom, there are some other things that we can do within Classwork that I will quickly mention as our time is coming to an end. And there are the notes for this are also at the end of the slideshow. But we talked about we talked about assignments. But we can also add quiz assignments, which basically embed a Google form and questions. So I'm just going to go into one that I've created. So in this case, I've created a quiz assignment. And when we create a quiz assignment, it attaches a Google form. And so this is a Google form that it attaches. The stuff on the right is exactly the same as in anything else in Google Classroom. The top is the same, but there is a form. At the bottom, there's a toggle switch that allows for import of grading, but if we import grading, it doesn't allow students to go back and change answers if you want to give them the opportunity to edit their answers. So here's a Google form. When it comes up, it'll be in the editable form. So we click on the pencil on the bottom. And so you can ask any sort of question, whether it be multiple choice or short answer. So all sorts of different types of questions. The multiple choice also allows your multiple choice or the checkbox one also allows you to create an answer key where I can select the correct answer, so it can mark, it can be marked and return those marks to students immediately if you'd like that. There's also the ability for feedback. So you can add feedback so that if a student gets an incorrect answer, you can do things like by using a link or a YouTube video, you can, if it's wrong, it will give them a hint to go to the site or a YouTube video, and then they can reassess and then come back and re-answer the question. They may just need some time to consider some different options or look at some different information. And for correct answers, you can just, well done, so that when they submit an answer, they'll get a response right away. If you use a short answer, so such as in this case, a short answer question, we can use things that like a response validation where the text has to be exactly the same, and if not, it doesn't let them move on. But if we don't use this response validation, whatever answer we put in, and if we use an answer key, the answer has to match. So short answers don't work very well in terms of the self-marking, in which case, what you should do is go into your settings and make this change. As it slowly, oh, here we go. Under quizzes, you have a couple of options here to release the grade immediately after each submission. So in that case, it's marked right away and the student gets feedback immediately, or later. So you can hold on to it and then return it yourself so that you have the opportunity to go in and review those short answers. So if you had it graded and you wanted to give them a grade for that, you could do that there. There's also a couple of important other pieces here. One is, you know, do you want them to be reminded about what questions they've missed? If there's point values, and this one here, correct answers. If you're using the format that I used where they did a multiple choice question, they got it wrong, they were led to a video to review something and then come back and answer it, you don't want to put correct answers because they'll just see the right answer. They won't have to go look at the video. They'll just type in the right answer. So you want to turn that one off. All right, and then you just want to save that. And then it's basically done. When they're done, you'll have the responses so that you can see. So you'll look at responses, and responses can be viewed in a variety of ways. We can look at the summary of responses in sort of charts, or we can look at individual responses, and we can just toggle through the students to see how each individual student answered. So for instance, this student did not get this answer right, nor this one. I can toggle to the next one. You could have it collect their names, or you could just on the form put names so I know who it belonged to. These ones I didn't put any names on. Oh boy, I got to get to a student who's actually answered something correctly here. Oh, there we go. Okay, so they answered this one correctly. Apparently they didn't answer that one correctly. So we can view things here. It also puts it in a Google Sheet, so we could look at a Google Sheet. So if we want it in a spreadsheet form, it does it that way as well. All right. The last one that I'm going to quickly show you is within Google Classroom, we can also use what's called a question. And a question's handy, especially if we're just trying to get some quick feedback. Are students comprehending what we're going over or not? And so for instance, here I asked a question, you know, which G Suite tool do you feel most comfortable with? And as students answer that, so if this is on the student side, the students already answered, but basically they'll see the answer, or the question, pardon me, they'll see the answers, they'll click on it, and they'll be able to see how other students responded if you've set it up that way. Also, they can also do a short answer. And so they have the question and then they have their answer and they can submit it. And I, as on the, on the teacher side, here we go. I can view the question and see how they've all done. And I can by clicking on the bar, it tells me who's answered in which manner, as well as on the left-hand side here, it'll also tell me how they've answered. For the short answer question, it'll just give me a list of their answers. One last thing about the short answer format. If we're using the questions in the short answer format, I'm just going to go into the editing. There is a feature within the short question. If we use the short answer question here, on the side here, it says students can reply to each other, students can edit an answer. Consider these ones carefully. If we select students can reply to each other, what it essentially means is they'll see each other's answers and who's answered in that manner. So I'll see the person's name and I'll see what they've answered. In some cases, that's great if it's like for something that's more sort of debate-like, offering opinions and things like that. In other cases, you may not want that on. And then the other one is do you want them to be able to edit their answers, yes or no? But you have that ability right there to do that. So that's great for some checking for understanding, some quick feedback. So that basically covers Google Classroom. The slides should help you. Again, we have our YouTube channel, and one of the playlists is one on just Google Classroom. And so much of what we went over, here's our Google Classroom playlist. You'll find in there, I'm still populating videos as we go along, so please refer to that. The other part that I will bring to your attention is at the very end here. So there's all this, here are all my slides. And remember, wherever you see, oh my goodness, my computer's so slow. Wherever you see this logo here, click on it. It'll bring you right to the YouTube channel and the video that associates it with that. So if I went through quizzes and forms quite quickly. So you might want to check that out. And the last thing here is on the very last slide. We've purchased some licenses for people who might be interested in learning more about Google Classroom. Shake Up Learning offers a course with videos. They're short videos. They're a work at your own pace type program. If you're interested in that, you can either contact myself or Neil Stevenson, and we will provide you with a user code so that you can enroll for free. So if you're interested in that and learning more about Google Classroom, get in touch with us. Otherwise, just check out the YouTube channel. I'll continue to add things there. So I see a question. What did you mean when you said Google Sites are better for primary classes? Excellent question. Google Sites is basically a website. And we find that for primary, mostly it's getting content out more so than having kids submit things back. So with a Google site, if you had a video, you could post that. If you had any documents, you could post those. So it's more for getting information out. It's more of a one-way communication type tool. Whereas Google Classroom allows students to hand things back in, as well as a teacher to hand things out. I hope that answers your question. There is a Google Sites, I did a Google Sites webinar yesterday, and that's going to get posted with the rest of the resources. And there is also the Google Sites webinar will be on the YouTube channel as well. So if there are any questions, please let me know.
Yeah, Peter, there's another one. Do you know the percentage of secondary teachers using Google Classroom?
As of probably last March, I would say that the majority of them would be using Google Classroom now. I can't say for sure what a percentage is, but there are a number. There are some that will be, people might have heard of Moodle and Emoto and some other platforms like that. Classroom isn't as elaborate as some of those other platforms, but it sort of does the basics in terms of communicating with students and providing them easy access because of our adoption of the Google platform.
And the same for intermediate, I think.
Yeah, I would say especially as of the pause in March, a lot of intermediate teachers also went to Google Classroom. Some primary as well. We find with primary, it just is a bit more challenging for them, and they would need some assistance.
There was another question about accessing the recorded videos. So Peter, you have yours on your channel, and then the recorded videos will be going onto that original site or the original document in which you found these.
Right,
Yeah.
right. We're going to link them there. So like, I know my sites one isn't on there because I need to do a little editing on it because I forgot to, people couldn't hear me for the first 5 minutes and nobody wants to listen to that, or maybe they do. So I just have to edit it, but they'll be up probably by the end of this week, early next week, everything will be there. And then on my YouTube channel, I'll be posting everything in there as well. So hopefully that's helpful. If you have further questions or you just need some one-on-one time or whatever, just please contact me. I'd be happy to help. And good luck with this. It's a really great tool for working with students. It's one of those tools, many tools where I say, I wish I was in the classroom when this was around. And unfortunately, I didn't have access to something like this. So make use. And if you have questions, please contact me. If you have any other questions, I can stick around for a few minutes. But other than that, I wish you all a great day. And thank you, Lisa, so much for moderating. That's so helpful.
Anytime, Peter.
All right.